welcome to this event. Lovely to meet you all. My name's Dr. Julie Evans. I'm the faculty tutor for brain sciences. In a moment, I'm going to show a presentation where I'll explain a little bit about what I do in relation to this programme. But I'd like to introduce the other people on the panel today. So Colin, you've introduced yourself, I think. Rosemary, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, my name is Rosemary Monk and I'm the Programme Director for the BSc in Audiology.
Thank you. And Martin? You're on mute, Martin.
Sorry about that. My name's Martin Abbott. I'm the Senior Administrator for the BSc Audiology programme.
Thank you. So, Colin, if you could share my slides, that would be great.
Can I just check that you can see them?
I can see them. Yeah,
okay.
Great. Everyone see and hear me? Yeah. Okay, so a big welcome to this discovery session. So this is an opportunity for you to find out whether studying the BSc Audiology and the careers it can lead you to is something that you're interested in at UCL. Next slide. So this is me. It's a bit of an old photo. Anyway, what do I do as faculty tutor? Well, I'm kind of like a Director of Education and Student Experience, and along with the Deputy Dean, Professor David Shanks, who I'm going to introduce you to in a moment, or at least a picture, I've got overarching responsibility for education and the student experience in the faculty. And that means that I work very closely with Dr. Monk and Martin to make sure that your degree and the quality of the teaching and the quality of the assessment is as good as it can be in a world-leading university, and also that your student experience is as great as it should be. And I follow you through really from the moment of application or offer right through to your degree. So I sign off the letters offering you a place on the degree programme, and I also sign off the final degrees that are awarded at your undergraduate exam board in 3 years' time. So yeah, it's from application to graduation that I'm involved with the programme, working closely with Dr. Monk. Next slide. So just to give you an update about today's agenda. So I'm going to introduce you to the Faculty of Brain Sciences and explain what that is in the structure of University College London. And then I'm going to hand over to Rosemary, who's going to give you an introduction to the BSc Audiology. And then there's a separate Q&A session at the end, but feel free to ask questions throughout this event. You don't have to wait until the Q&A session. You can just type your question. Can be about anything, can be about UCL, can be about the program, can be about applications, can be about student life. Just pop it into the Q&A chat bits in the event, in Zoom at the bottom of your screen. And can I ask you to keep your cameras turned off and your microphone? So we hope to get some questions. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the faculty. The faculty is the kind of overarching bit of structure at UCL. So UCL is divided into a number of faculties, and we are, of course, the best faculty. I'll explain why a bit later. I've got some evidence for that. And the man in charge is the faculty dean, who's Professor Alan Thompson. He's a very esteemed neurologist and a global world leader in research into movement disorders, particularly MS. And the deputy faculty dean, who's my boss, who's got responsibility for education and research, is Professor David Shanks, who's a psychologist who works on memory and decision making. Next slide, please. So the way that UCL organises its structures in terms of education, in terms of research, and in terms of enterprise is it it's organizing it into 11 different faculties, okay? And the faculties are made up of a number of divisions and departments and institutes that are similar in terms of you know, their research and their education, in terms of their subject discipline. So we have, for example, as well as the Faculty of Brain Sciences, we've got a Faculty of Laws, we've got a Faculty of Arts and Humanities, we've got Faculty of Engineering, etc., etc. And that faculty is the organising structure for all education, as well as research and enterprise. So in the same way that there are lots of departments in faculties, we have our Faculty of Brain Sciences is made up of a number of different areas. Obviously, one of them is the Ear Institute, where your degree will be situated, which is smaller than some of the areas, but, you know, very precious. We also have the Institute of Ophthalmology, which is also quite small and very niche, but again, very precious. Then the sort of second largest area is the Queen Square Institute of Neurology. Then we have the Division of Psychiatry, and then we have the big Division of Psychology and Language Sciences, where all of the undergraduate programs sit, which accounts for about 2/3 of the education and the student numbers. So undergraduate programs are only taught in the Division of Psychology and Language Sciences, and of course the Ear Institute. The other parts of the faculty have master's programs, and of course PhD students. Everyone has PhD students. So next slide, please. So here's the Faculty of Brain Sciences structure. So just to give you an idea of where your institute, should you undertake the BSc Audiology degree, sits within the general organisation. And I'm not boasting when I say we are the best faculty at UCL. Oops, sorry, that was just something falling off the wall. For the last 2 years, our student satisfaction scores on the National Student Survey, which runs in the final year of the programme, have been the best at UCL. So for the last 2 years running, we're always in the top 3, but the last 2 years we've been the best. And I fully expect that to continue once we have students getting into the 3rd year of the BSc Audiology degree. So we have a really good reputation, and obviously we work very closely with students, and I'm definitely saying we're the best place to study an undergraduate degree, at least, and the students are telling us that. Next slide, please. And UCL has an amazing global reputation. I've been privileged to travel around the world to some far-flung places, and UCL's name is known everywhere. So currently we're 8th in the world. I think we've been as high as 4th in the world at one time. So we've always been in the top 10 for the last 10 years that I've been working here. We're 4th in Europe for graduate employability, though obviously one of the reasons why you're applying for this program is the employability afterwards, which I'm sure Rosemary will talk more about later. And the teaching staff includes some of the most influential clinicians and researchers in the field of ear disorders or hearing sciences. We were also first for research power. So this is how many people are doing research, how is their research being distributed, what impact does it have on society, how many journal articles are written, how many research papers are written in prestigious in prestigious journals, and we are #1 in the UK for research power in psychology, psychiatry and neuroscience. And that neuroscience also takes place in the Ear Institute, where they're doing some very interesting work, what I would call from bench to bedside, really looking at the basic sciences of hearing and hearing loss, and translating that into effective, eventually to effective treatments. Next slide, please. So in the Faculty of Brain Sciences, we have a small number of undergraduate programs, the audiology one being the obvious one. We also have 2 programs in linguistics, and there are definitely crossovers between sort of language sciences and audiology. And we also have 2 degrees in psychology, one in straightforward psychology and one in psychology and language sciences. And as I'm sure Rosemary will discuss, and from my understanding, hearing loss affects not just that audiological input, but it also has an input on socialization and an input emotionally and an input psychologically as well. And I'm sure Rosemary will talk about that. And you will learn little bits of psychology, I'm sure, on your BSc Audiology, because it's the impacts of hearing loss that you know, on the whole person, not just the ear and the brain. Next slide, please. So what do I do as faculty tutor, which is, just as I said, an old-fashioned term for the Director of Education and Student Experience? Well, we make sure that your application process is fair and transparent. We make sure that the Ear Institute has the resources to support your education, and those resources are of a very high standard. We make sure that the quality of your education, the teaching, the assessment, the experience is appropriate for what is a world-leading university, in the top 10 universities in the world. And we also work with your program team to make sure you have the best student experience possible. And of course, student experience isn't just about your education, it's wider than that as well. And UCL continues to support you in terms of your employability when you graduate as well. So there's a great careers support area of UCL that can even help you get part-time jobs during term time on campus. Next slide, please. So I continue to work closely with your program leader. So this is Dr. Monk, to ensure that you have a world-class education. You're coming to a world-class university and your education should be world-class. We work with program leaders across the faculty to make sure that they're aware of the latest innovations in education that can enhance your educational experience. Now that the BSc Audiology has started this year, we'll be bringing them on board next year with an event that takes place in the first year for all of our undergraduate students across the faculty that we organise at the faculty. So it's called Meet the Researcher. UCL is an incredible community of rich research that has real world applications, that does actually change society and changes people's lives. You know, much of it is clinical or related to health issues, such as audiology. And we want you as first year students to be aware and to engage in that community right from the beginning. And so within the first few weeks of you joining, it's certainly in the first term of you joining the BSc Audiology program, if you're successful in coming here, then you get to interview an appropriate researcher for an hour and ask them, you know, all sorts of questions like, what is your research? What's your big research question? Why is it important? And what have you found? And increasingly, I think students are also interested in, how did you get where you got now? Because at one point, all of these world-class researchers, all of these senior, you know, and esteemed professors would have been in your position, looking to apply to start the first year of an undergraduate degree program at some point. So they have been in your shoes and now they're like here. And we also run a final year undergraduate conference where students who've completed their research project in their final year have the opportunity as a sort of full undergraduate cohort, so all of the degrees together, to present at a conference. So it gives them lots of skills, confidence about presenting their research work in public, and we have prizes, so, and a little party afterwards. So it's a really nice social event. What else do we do? Well, we'll also run a social event. It's not happened yet, but it's going to happen in November for all of the first year students that have started in all our degree programs. So it's an opportunity for you to meet students from other degree programs within the faculty as well. So those are the kind of things that we will do at faculty level, as opposed to events that happen at program level. Next slide. Another thing that is very good about UCL is we are very aware that transitioning to university from school or college is incredibly exciting, but it's also quite challenging. And some of you might be coming to a new city or even perhaps a new country. And so it's challenging as well as exciting, but we understand it, and there is a lot of support. So if you do decide to apply here and you're made an offer, then before you start the university, then we send out what we call our transition leaflets. So these are just some words of advice, some top tips from students, current students to incoming students. And they're the kind of, I wish I'd known this before I came to UCL. And some of it's social, some of it's how to find your way around UCL, and some of it's about the program and time management, etc., etc. Next slide. But we will also have, because we'll have already a second year of this degree, this new degree program next year, there'll be transition mentors. So transition mentors are students that are on the same program as you, but a year or two ahead. And you will meet with your transition mentor regularly through the first 2 terms of your first year at UCL, if you come here. And they can advise you about anything. They can advise you about academic matters. They can talk to you about assessments, what textbooks to buy, you know, what are the challenging bits of the first year program. And they can also tell you, you know, which cafe or restaurant does really cheap curries, you know, on a Tuesday night. And also lots of student discounts that you can get. So it's students mentoring new students, and you'll be able to learn from their experiences socially, academically, and personally, and how they adapted to life at UCL and life in London. And they're a great source of support. Next slide, please. Another thing that I think is very important, we place a lot of emphasis and priority on this, is student representation and student feedback. Now, obviously, there'll be lots of feedback about your teaching that you give your program, and this will be collected regularly. But also we have these positions called student representatives, and you'll have one for each year of the BSc Audiology degree. And the student representatives will sit on what's called the Staff Student Consultative Committee and represent their particular cohort of students. We also, so they will, you know, they will be sitting not just on the Staff Student Consultative Committee, but also on the Programme Committee that discusses issues about the BSc Audiology. We also have a faculty representative, and this is a student rep who works with us at faculty level and sits on our faculty education undergraduate committee, who represents the whole cohort of undergraduate students within the faculty. So the student experience and the student voice is really at the heart of our educational vision. And, you know, we do listen, we do act on, and we do feedback to students. And when we're organising events, then we ask students, well, what do you want? You know, what can help you? What can we do at faculty level? What can we do at programme level? So we like to hear your views on how things are going for you, both positive and areas that need enhancement. But we are a faculty that listens to our students, and I think that's a really important message. Next. Now, back to the challenges of doing a degree at UCL or a degree anywhere or living in London. There will be times when you feel really challenged, when you feel, you know, oh God, this is all too much. I'm a bit stressed, but there's a whole raft of support that we offer students to help them along the way to complete their degree. So firstly, there'll be some kind of personal tutor. So every student will have a personal tutor. They might be called a seminar leader. There might be a different name for them, but there will be a person who you can go and talk to about academic matters or pastoral matters. So things that are impacting on your study that are outside of UCL. You have program directors. So this is, in your case, Dr. Monk. There's me. You can also talk to me. And Central UCL, as opposed to the faculty, also offers a vast range of support. It's got an excellent student support and wellbeing area, which isn't just for students who might have difficulties or might be facing challenges, such as disability or ill health. It also runs courses for students to how to manage their time, how to deal with stress, how to deal with stress around exam time, how to study well. So there are lots of well-being tips and courses that they also provide to keep you in that top tip condition throughout your degree programme. We've also got a chaplain and an interfaith advisor. If you're having some financial difficulties, there's student funding advisors who can talk to you about budgets and any opportunities at UCL for hardship funds, etc., etc. We've got part of student support and wellbeing is the disability support that will work with you to ensure that you're getting the appropriate support throughout your studies that you might have had in school or college. There's UCL careers, which are great, not just for what happens next, although obviously you're interested in a career in audiology, that's why you're interested in this degree, but they can help you find part-time jobs as well throughout your degree, sometimes on campus. So, you know, they don't just help with what happens afterwards. And of course, there's the Students' Union, which has a rights and advice area and will support you in all kinds of matters. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's a real whiz through UCL and the faculty and where this program sits at UCL, support services. So there will be a Q&A session at the end, but if you've got any questions that you want to ask now, then just type them in the Q&A part of this event. And I'm now going to hand over to Dr. Monk, who's going to tell you all about the degree program.
Bear with me just a minute while I get set up. Okay, so thank you, Julie. That was really helpful. And I have to say it's really nice that Julie has a really good understanding of our course, talking about all the psychological side of hearing loss as well as the actual technical side. So thank you for that, Julie. So first of all, I want to talk about why you might want to study audiology and what is audiology, first of all. Well, it is the process of diagnosing and treating any ear-related disorders, anything like hearing loss, tinnitus, or balance problems, so things that are caused by problems with the ear. And in the UK, it's part of a group of health professions that come under the umbrella of healthcare science and clinical physiology. So audiologists aren't doctors, they're not nurses, but they're part of those professions that support healthcare. So similar kind of profession to physiotherapist or optometrist. So what we do is we work clinically with people all the way from newborn babies through to the end stages of life, so quite elderly people. And we test their ear function in some way to help diagnose problems, and then work with that person and their family, and sometimes with other healthcare professions, to either treat or manage the problem they've got, to find solutions to help them either live with their condition or resolve their condition, depending on what it is. It's not all we do though, because the other things that we do is that we develop and deliver and monitor services for people with ear disorders. So actually a lot of audiologists will in their profession have set up a brand new service within their clinic or within their hospital for people with ear disorders. And on a daily basis, we work with a range of different scientific methods and technology. So if you like science, this is definitely something that you should consider. So let me move on to my next slide. So what can you do when you come out the other end of a degree in audiology? The first and most obvious choice for a lot of our graduates is to go into a clinical role. And that means you'll work either in the NHS, if you're in the UK, or in the private health sector as an audiologist, assessing and managing different ear conditions as an independent practitioner. The other role that you can have in the UK is hearing aid dispensing, which means you can sell hearing aids in your own clinic or in a group of clinics. So there's some very well-known high street names that deliver both optometry services and prescribed glasses, but they also do hearing aids as well. What people aren't necessarily aware of, though, is that there are a number of other different careers you can go into. First of all, you can go into research and teaching roles at a university. I did that. And so you can be a research assistant, you can do further study to complete a PhD and become a doctor in audiology. And you can also teach audiology to students. That's what I do, and pass on your clinical skills and clinical knowledge so that the people coming through who are employed actually have the knowledge and skills to do the job. You can also work for organisations that are not-for-profit, so charities. Quite often, charities that are based on ear-related conditions employ clinical audiologists, first as advisors, but also sometimes they offer clinics themselves. So you can be a clinical audiologist there, you can do research into audiology for a charity, or you can provide support for the public, support and advice, and develop not clinical services, but services that your charity can provide for the general public. Another role you can have is in the commercial sector. So in order to provide clinical services, we have to have companies that sell us hearing aid and audiology test equipment and other kinds of equipment. And so there are equipment sectors that have sales, training and management roles in them. And actually it is a really common pathway for people to move into. It's often something people do after a few years of clinical experience, because then they have the experience to be able to advise people more specifically. But often some of our graduates will go into that route straight away. And finally, if you get to the end of the course and you think, well, actually, I've enjoyed my degree, but I've decided that a clinical role or one of these roles isn't for me, there's a range of other healthcare management and scientific roles that you can go into, because the degree will give you the basic scientific skills that you need. So moving on to the kind of people who study audiology, most of them enjoy talking to people and interacting with people. They get a buzz from having a good conversation with somebody, and they're almost always driven to improve other people's lives. They want to make other people's lives better. It helps if they enjoy learning about science. The course is quite scientific and quite technical. So if you like learning about science and you like using technology, it's definitely worth a consideration. Teamwork's a really strong part of being an audiologist. You have to work with other audiologists. You have to be willing to work with patients and members of their families, and sometimes other organisations like social services or Teachers of the Deaf. So actually, it's really important that you're comfortable working with other people. And it really helps if you like problem solving. People come to us because they have a problem with their ear, or using the information from their ear. And actually, if you like working out what the actual problems are and helping people to solve them, it's definitely a good profession for you. Finally, one of the traits that I've noticed that people who come into audiology have is that they're willing to take responsibility for the things that they do. If you become a clinical audiologist, you have to make clinical decisions about people on a daily basis, and you have to take responsibility for making sure those decisions are sensible and logical and evidence-based. So those are the kinds of people we usually get on our course. So a little bit about the Ear Institute. We're a world-renowned research and teaching centre, and our aim is to understand ear problems and to identify the best ways to treat or manage them. And we do that in a number of different ways, but a lot of our research is basic bench research, looking at the ear at a cellular level, but it also spreads across to translational research, which is where we put what we find into practice. So we actually have research that's being carried out in hospitals in the London area and across the country as well. We teach undergraduate, postgraduate, and also professional development courses in audiology, otology, which is ear, nose and throat medicine, and audiovestibular medicine. So actually our students, we have a really broad range of students. We have a lot of people who are learning to qualify in audiology for the first time, but actually we also have students who are experienced audiologists and some who are qualified doctors who are specializing in certain areas. So you get to mix with quite a broad range of people with a broad range of knowledge and quite a broad range of ages as well. We work really closely with our healthcare partners, such as the University College London NHS Trust, but also a lot of other NHS hospitals and the private healthcare sector, both in terms of private hospitals and private hearing aid dispensers. So the BSc in Audiology is a brand new course for 2022. I'm delighted to say we welcomed our first students on this course into their induction week 2 weeks ago. They've just had their first week of teaching and learning, and it's been really good fun to learn with them. I think we've all enjoyed the experience, both of them and us. I say that having asked them for feedback. So we have started the course for the first time. It's a 3-year full-time course. It's a campus-based course. You have to come to campus to learn it. And we aim to provide the knowledge and skills that you would need to undertake a clinical career in audiology or research in audiology, or to work in the commercial and charitable sectors that support audiology. And there are really 4 main themes in the degree course. The first is science and research, and that's really important because if you are delivering evidence-based medicine or evidence-based practice, which we are required to do in the UK by the NHS, then you need to make sure that what you're doing has some evidence and scientific underpinning to it. The second theme is the clinical theory and practice, actually understanding what does this test result show me and what does that mean I need to think about in terms of managing this patient. Another theme that people don't necessarily think about, but it's really important, is professional healthcare and practice, understanding what is health, how does it affect people, and what kind of behaviours and actions are required of people who work professionally in healthcare. And then the last but by no means least theme is self-development, and we have a specific series of modules that are called Study Skills and Personal Development, where we help you develop as a person throughout your course. So in terms of the actual types of study that you will do, we have a series of modules. In the first year, you'll study the science aspects through the Science in Healthcare module and the Science in Audiology module. You'll learn a little bit about healthcare and professional practice in the Introduction to Healthcare and Professional Practice. And you'll also learn communication skills. Now that's communication skills with other people from a patient and professional perspective, but also working with other professionals, and also how to communicate with people who have hearing loss or other communication difficulties. And all of those modules happen in the first term of your first year. So all of our current students are working on those at the moment. In the second term, you then move on to Audiology 1, which is the theory underpinning audiology. So you'll learn about different ear disorders, how to test for them, and what common management options are. You'll also do some case-based learning where you actually work through cases, real proper cases, actual people who have conditions, to see how the testing and the treatment works. And that links in with the theory that you learn. At the same time, you'll be doing a clinical practice module where you'll learn how to do things like look down ears and test people's hearing. And then your study skills and personal development module runs throughout the entire year. And in the first term of the first year, it concentrates on giving you those study skills so that you can do well on your course and well on your assessment. And then in term 2, it concentrates more on taking part in the general community of life. So things like finding out more about audiology, finding out more about research, volunteering for different things. In year 2, we move on to research methods and analysis, because we need you to have those scientific skills so that you're ready to do your research project in year 3. And then we have 3 audiology modules that will teach you about diagnosing conditions, about managing hearing loss, and about special areas of audiology, such as testing children and testing people's balance. Again, you'll have case-based learning, so you'll follow through some real cases from start to finish, from first presenting with symptoms to final management of that condition. And you'll also be developing your skills, your clinical skills, further in preparation for your final year placement. Again, we have some more study skills and personal development, and in some of those sessions you'll be working with other students from other healthcare disciplines to learn about common areas of overlap. So in your final year, you get to do your research project, which is really exciting because you get to learn about something really specific in great detail. And then you have 2 audiology modules, one of which deals with healthcare and professional practice. But then also between those modules, you have some topics that you can choose between. And they might be things like learning a little bit more about people with tinnitus, or a little bit more about testing people who have severe to profound hearing loss, or a little bit more about balance disorders. In your clinical practice module in year 3, you'll actually go on clinical placement, and you will go into a hospital or a clinic, and you will work and develop your skills and work alongside members of staff providing clinical services. And then your study skills and personal development module in year 3 is more about making sure that your CV is in place and that you have some interview experience. So that's what we learn. Typically, you can expect for a standard 15 credit module, and most of the theory modules are 15 credits. There's 1 or 2 that are a little bit bigger than that, but most of them are 15 credits. You can expect to spend about 10 to 12 hours per week in total on those modules. And that might be 4 to 5 hours of preparation or group work, and some of that may be online, but some of it may be face-to-face. And then we have 1 or 2 hours of face-to-face lectures or tutorials or seminars for that topic, where we put into practice the things that you've already learned. And then there might be anywhere between 3 to 5 hours of self-directed study, things that you want to follow up on just to consolidate your knowledge or to develop your knowledge further. And then there's a bit more time for revision and assessments. The types of teaching that we do, we have some online study of video lectures, they're quite short video lectures, podcasts, a lot of study activities where you're actually asked to find information that you then present to the class in the face-to-face sessions, and guided reading tasks where we give you something to read, and it might be a professional practice document, and we ask you to pick out some key points on that for discussion or for reporting back on. And the face-to-face teaching sessions might be lectures, but more often than not, they're tutorials where we actually take what you've learned and we put it into practice. So if you've been learning about hearing aid output, we might actually be looking at some hearing aid output graphs and deciding whether or not those hearing aids are functioning as they should. We do both large and small group activities. Often our group activities are in groups of 3 or 4, but sometimes they will be in larger groups than that, but usually no more than 8. So in your clinical modules, again, you normally have to spend between 10 and 14 hours. There's 3 to 4 hours of preparation, and that will be learning about the clinical skill that you're going to be doing in the practical sessions. The practical sessions may be 2 to 4 hours a week. They're not 4 hours of solid practical sessions. That's usually 2 practicals of 2 hours because your brain can't cope with more than that. But then also there's time for independent practice. So we have open sessions where the lab is available for you to just go in and practice what you need to learn by yourself. Sometimes those might be online, so we're looking to set up some clinical simulations online so that you can do that online, and they won't be in the lab, but you might have to do that as a group online together. And then usually you'll have practical tasks to write up every week, and we reckon you'll probably need about an hour, sometimes 2, to write those up, depending on what they are. And the kinds of teaching that we have video demonstrations, we have guided reading of national procedures. The lab-based sessions are practical. You will sit there and you will look down other students' ears, and then as you develop your skills, you'll actually be doing those, looking down the ears of volunteers, people who aren't students, who aren't working on your course, but who are happy to give up some of their time to come and let you practice on them. Again, we have group activities, and again, we have case-based learning. So you'll be taking patient histories from people and then doing their tests to see how the history and the test results link together. We have what we call simulated clinics. That can be testing on volunteers. And we also have clinical observation. So that can be online. We're in the process of setting up observation of online clinics for you at the moment. And it can also be physically on site at a clinic. And in your first year, you'll have maybe 1 or 2 days of just visiting clinics to see what happens in them. And then finally, you have your clinical placements. In year 2, that's several weeks in placement, and in year 3, it's a few months in placement. So as I said, the integrated clinical placements are full-time in the clinical department. You work as part of that team, and that's one of the real strengths of a clinical placement, is you get to see what the job is really like working with the clinical team. You're not left to your own devices. We have experienced clinicians who are trained as supervisors to support you and mentor you through the process. And as I said, in year 2, it'll be several weeks in term 2, and in year 3, it's terms 2 and 3, so January through to June, that you'll be in your clinical placement. And during that time, there will be some assessments during your placement time to check how you're doing. So what kind of assessments do we use? Lots. We try and vary them so that you're not really bored with essays. There are essays in there. So if you like essays, that's all good. But we have things like mini tests, and some of those will be sitting down in a class with a piece of paper and having a test, and some of them will be online. We have written exams. Some of them are timed and some of them are open book. We have clinical competency assessments, and I need to flag up now that they are pass-fail. You need to be able to look down an ear safely to be able to practice clinically. So as long as you're meeting the minimum requirements, you will pass your assessments on the clinical front. In terms of coursework, we might ask you to create patient information documents such as infographics or leaflets. And actually one of the things you do in your first term is write a patient information leaflet about something that you learn on. We do give you essays. My assessment this term for my students on year 1 is an essay, but it's an interesting essay. And we have portfolios of practical work where you show that you've developed the skills. So actually you've managed to get the readings out from this hearing aid, and you've been able to make some decisions about it and write that up. We'll ask you to do presentations. We'll ask you to present case reports, write reviews of cases, obviously write up your research project. And we may also ask you to record some video demonstrations of your own clinical ability, so that you can look at them later and say, oh, I didn't do that quite right. So we try and make it a mix of assessments. So why should you study with us? Well, we've got over 15 years of experience in delivering high quality undergraduate and postgraduate degree courses. Although this undergraduate degree course is new, we have been delivering undergraduate teaching for some time now. Our teachers are experts in their field, either of clinical practice, so we have clinicians who work part-time with us and part-time in hospitals or private practice, or they may be experts in audiology research or ear research. We have really high satisfaction rates from our current students. So in 2021, our postgraduate tour experience survey, 92% of students recommended studying at the Ear Institute, which is really great. We have really small class sizes. So on our BSc, we are looking at having around 20 students each year. So that's not large. And that means you have a really strong sense of community with your other students, but also with us as educators. So we get to know all our student groups pretty well. We're a small institute and we have small groups that we teach. And we like to involve you as part of the institute, so you feel part of what's going on in the wider community at the Ear Institute. We have really excellent clinical skills equipment and research facilities, and I can say we have just updated our clinical skills lab, and last year we invested a rather large amount of money in brand new clinical equipment so that you get to learn on the best equipment, on up-to-date equipment. So what you're using is what you're going to be using out there in clinics. We give you regular contact with patients and professionals in audiology. So actually, one of the sessions that we have in term 1 in year 1 is that actually the students will be getting together with members of the public to learn about the experience of undergoing healthcare processes. Talking about what do they want from their healthcare professional? What do they want from their hearing care professional? So you'll get real experience talking to people who are members of the public who may have ear disorders and other professionals in audiology, clinicians, doctors from other areas, about actually what does their area of expertise add to this? How can we think about ear disorders in a different way? And I think that really helps because it means you're not just thinking about it from your own perspective. Obviously, we give the integrated clinical placements, and that really does help people put their learning into context. And then finally, I think one of the things that is a real strength of this course is that the study skills and personal development modules are really there to develop you academically and also personally, to put you in a really strong position when you finish the course for going out there and standing out in the jobs market as somebody who's done other things and who understands their profession. So thank you for listening. At this point, I will stop sharing, but if there are any questions, we would be most happy to answer those. So please do post them in the chat in the question and answer. So if anybody has any questions, please ask them now.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. I think that was a very comprehensive presentation about the programme. So yeah, if anyone does have a question, please feel free to put it in the Q&A and we will answer them as much as possible. There's already a question. What is the selection process for the programme?
Okay, so the selection process is that you need to apply through the standard UCL undergraduate application route. We will check your A-level grades meet our requirements, and we are looking for you to submit a personal statement to explain why you're interested in audiology and to show some understanding of what it is that you're letting yourself in for on the course. So we review those and then we basically accept people who meet those requirements.
Great, thank you, Rosemary. Someone has asked another question as well, and I think this is quite a popular theme. So someone has asked, does your personal statement play a large role in the admissions process? And I think as perhaps kind of a follow-on question from that as well, do you have any advice of what people should put in their personal statements?
Yes. Oh yes, personal statement is really important for this. This kind of degree is basically giving you the knowledge and skills to do this professionally. And audiology is a healthcare profession, which is a vocational profession. You can be paid well in it, but that's not necessarily the reason most people do it. Most people do it because they're trying to improve people's quality of life. So yes, personal statements can really tell me that the person understands a little bit about it, has actually bothered to find out about audiology, which I want to know. I want to know that you really want to do my course. So writing on your personal statement, why you want to do it, why does this appeal to you, and to show me that you've learned something about audiology, or that you have personal experience of it if you do, but why that personal experience has made you want to do this. So yeah, explaining your reasons for doing this is really important to us in your personal statement, to show that you've made an effort already to find out more and to develop your knowledge, but also to kind of tell us what you're like as a person as well. Studying isn't just about study. I mean, it is, and your degree is really important, but also there's that thing of you're not just your studies, you are a genuine person. So telling us a little bit about yourself and the other things that you've done is also really helpful in your personal statement, because it shows us you're a rounded person.
Oh, thank you, Rosemary. Next question is there any equipment that students would need to buy? How far, a few questions. How far would we need to travel for placements? And what is the percentage of essays to exams throughout 3 years? I can repeat them if you need to.
Yeah, inevitable. How many essays do I have to write and how many exams do I have? Okay, I'm going to start with that one first. It depends on the year and it depends on the modules. So I can give you an example. So this term, in terms of the assessments, so our students have 4 modules. One of the assessments is a group poster presentation about something that they've learned about. So they work in groups of 3 or 4 to create an information poster. It's not a scientific poster, it's an information poster about something that they've learned to present the information. So they have one of those. They have 1 essay, 2 essays, beg your pardon, 2 essays. No, 1 essay, beg your pardon, 1 essay. They have a patient information leaflet to write. I was confusing that. I thought that was a second essay. So patient information leaflet to write. They have a video. They have to provide a video of themselves doing communication skills and a reflection on how they found the process and what they think, how they think they did. And they have an exam. And they have a literature review to do. So they have to search the literature and find all the scientific evidence for a particular topic and write a report on that. So that's term 1. In term 2, they will have an exam, which covers their audiology knowledge. They will have a case report to write, and they will have to do clinical practical assessments. And at the end of the year, they have to submit a portfolio to show what they've done in their study skills and personal development, of course. So there really is quite a blend of assessments. You're going to have to remind me of the other 2 questions, Colin. I'm sorry, I talk too much. I forgot.
No, of course, no, yeah. Is there any equipment that students
Oh,
need
yes,
to buy?
yeah. So there is some equipment that we recommend that you have. We provide everything you need in the clinical skills lab, but actually it's really helpful to have some basic equipment at home. So once you're signed off as being able to look down people's ears, you can actually practice outside the clinical skills lab, because actually looking down people's ears is a really, it's a very safe thing to do once you're taught how to do it safely. And we would like you to keep your skills as good as possible. So yes, I think we ask you to buy an otoscope and some bits and pieces, and it's definitely no more than £120, but actually I think we've cut back on what we're suggesting you buy. You do not have to buy it, but we recommend that you buy it. So in terms of equipment, yes. And what was the other one? How far do you travel for placements? So placements can be, and I say can be, anywhere in the Greater London area and the Southeast. They can be. We offer a reasonable number of our placements in London, and sometimes we ask people to go outside London for placements. We have a structure to help with the financial aspects of that. So we would expect you to be able to fund the travel within the travel zone area. But if there is travel beyond that, or for some reason you need to move to a particular location, because there are some really excellent departments outside London that are actually very, very good at training people who we want to use because we know you'll get a good experience. So if we're asking for you to relocate for a period of time, we have a placement support fund that you can apply to for some financial support with that. So it could be anywhere, normally in the southeast. Occasionally we have people who ask if they can go to placements elsewhere. We cannot guarantee it. One of the things I must make really clear is that we offer you a placement, but we cannot specifically guarantee that that will be at a location of your choice. We have to go where the placements are offered, and where placements are offered will depend on things like staffing levels in the department and whether the main supervisor is on maternity leave that year. So we do have variation in locations, but most of them are in the Greater London area.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Rosemary. I think we're almost at the end of this afternoon's session, but there are just a couple of questions about applications and grade entry requirements.
Yeah.
So someone has asked, would you be at a greater advantage of being selected with higher grades than the entry requirements, which are A, B at A level? So I think that's also answered the second person's question as well about the predicted grades needed.
Yeah, so predicted grades, we ask for AAB as our standard entry requirement. We do, however, accept applications through the Access UCL system, and we have half of our students on the first year came to us through the Access UCL system. So we do look at those according to the Access UCL requirements rather than the course requirements. People with higher grades will be allowed on, but if you meet our requirements, you meet our requirements, and as long as we have places, you will be offered a place.
Great, thank you, Rosemary. I think someone's asked a kind of a similar question along those lines. When I checked online, it said the university undergraduate requirements are 30 distinctions and 15 merits through an Access to HE course. Is that correct? Do you know off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I would have to check with our admissions team because I'm not good at the conversions. Sorry, it's not my area of expertise. I do clinical audiology. But no, I think that is whatever is indicated there is probably correct. You can always drop the admissions team an email to double check that if you wish to check that. But I think certainly in equivalencies, we do ask for specific equivalencies. And the key thing for me is making sure that if you're doing something that is not an A level, that you can demonstrate you have the right level of science, because it is a scientific course, and particularly biology is of real importance. So you do have to have biology A level and one other science or equivalent. So if you're doing equivalence, so some of the BTECs, there are different options in BTECs, and I think it's really important that you have the science, because you need that underpinning to understand the science to do the course.
No, great, thank you. I think we are overrunning slightly, but there's just one last question.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you need work experience to get an offer?
You don't need work experience in audiology. You don't need work experience, but it does help to have some kind of life experience. So if you haven't got work experience, it helps to show that you've been active in your community. It is important to us that people who come on the course have some kind of interaction with other people, because that is what you're going to be doing on a regular basis. So you don't have to have work experience, but if you don't, I'd like to see something else that shows you've kind of got out there and engaged with other people.
Great, thank you so much. I think that's all of the questions and the Q&A answered for now. I'd like to say thank you so much for everyone who has joined us this afternoon. Thank you so much to Julie, to Rosemary, to Martin for joining us as well. I think if you have any questions, I put an email address somewhere. I'll put it in the chat. So please feel free to reach out if we didn't have time. If you had a question and didn't have time to ask it, please do send it to us via email and we'll definitely get back to you as well. But for now, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, and thank you for your questions. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.